Hi, I'm Miss Houston, fourth grade teacher here at Lone Star, and I'm going to read chapter 10. Well, the crowds kept gathering that way for almost a week, but after that it began to quiet down a little. The Freedom Sentinel had never sold so many copies before, and Pop had to run through a second printing of about 2,000 copies to keep up with all the visitors. The grocery store ran out of ice cream and soft drinks every day except Thursday, when we had a thunderstorm in the middle of the afternoon. By Saturday, things had calmed down again. There were just one or two people at a time now, mostly scientists from way off somewhere like Wisconsin or Kentucky that couldn't get here any sooner. One very dignified-looking man with a big beard came all the way from Toronto, Canada. He stood looking at Uncle Beasley for the longest time. Finally, he turned to Dr. Zymer and said, "I say, I do believe you're right. When I first heard the news, I thought you American paleontologists had gone off half-cocked about this. But I must say, I have been quite convinced. Quite. Ah, you must be Kennedy from the National Museum." "No, I'm Zymer, and you're from Toronto, you said." "Yes, Morrison's the name." Dr. Zymer looked awfully pleased. "Why, Professor Morrison," he said, "I'm very happy to see you. It was very good of you to come. You know, I must admit, I've had my doubts about whether this really is a dinosaur. But if you agree, then I'm not going to worry anymore." Professor Morrison smiled. "You know, Zymer, I'm curious about what you plan to do with this amazing specimen. Will you be able to take good care of him? I'm never sure what you Americans may do with valuable things like this. You're all such super businessmen over here that I shouldn't be at all surprised if you sold this animal to Hollywood or used it to advertise a Frankfurter stand. You will be careful of it, won't you?" "You'd better to speak to the owner," Dr. Zymer said, pointing to me. "Nate Twitchell. This is Professor Albert Morrison, the world's greatest authority on dinosaurs." "So you're the owner?" Professor Morrison said, and his eyes sort of twinkled as he talked to me. "My boy, you have a most remarkable creature here. It's very precious to all of us. And it's precious because it's alive. Remember that, won't you? I hope you'll do everything you can to keep it alive." "Yes, sir, I will." "Good boy," Professor Morrison said. "I know we can count on you." Later that afternoon, I sat down under the maple tree in the yard to see what the newspaper had to say about Uncle Beasley. I'd been so busy the last few days, I hadn't a chance. This is what the New York Times had said. "Live dinosaur hatches from hen's egg. Freedom, New Hampshire, August 4th. Scientists from all over the country are flocking to the little town of Freedom to see their first living dinosaur, which hatched recently from a hen's egg on the farm of Nathan Twitchell. Just how this animal, whose race has been extinct for millions of years, could have hatched from a hen's egg is unexplained. Paleontologists have gathered here from New York, Boston, Philadelphia, Chicago, and elsewhere over the United States, and they all agree that it actually is a dinosaur of the type known as Triceratops, a grass-eating reptile with 3 horns and a great bony collar over its neck. This species of dinosaur is known to have reached the length of more than 20 feet, weighing 10 tons when fully grown." I heard someone walking up the path, so I put down the paper. There was a man in a blue suit carrying his coat over his arm. "Hello, Mac," he said. "Is this the place with the dinosaur?" "Yup," I said. Your name, Nathan Twitchell? Yup. Can I look at the dinosaur? Sure, I said, and led him out to Uncle Beasley's pen. Uncle Beasley was asleep, stretched out on his side in the sunshine. You sure he's alive? The man said. Sure is. You see him breathing? The man nodded. My name's Bill Griner. I got a gas station up to Conway, and I heard about this dinosaur you got down here. I got to thinking that would be a swell thing to have in a cage outside my gas station. The stations are all doing that now. They got bears or a raccoon or maybe a monkey. It's good for business. People stop and buy gas at a place that's got animals. Now, if I had this dinosaur up there, I'd put up a big sign. Only living dinosaur in the world. And just about everybody would stop to see it and buy gas. See what I mean? I nodded. I saw what he meant all right, but somehow I didn't take to the idea. Well now, how much do you want for him? The man said. I'd be willing to give you a good price. Oh, no thanks, I said. I want to keep him. But look, kid, I'm offering you real money. You've got no use for a dinosaur, and you've got all that work taking care of him and feeding him and all that. Just let me take him off your hands, and you can make a nice profit on him. What do you say? I just don't want to sell him, I said. But what's the sense of that, kid? What good is it to you? It's too ugly for a pet, and there's no market for dinosaurs these days, and it's going to be a big expense to feed in the winter. But I said I wanted to keep him, I told the man. But I don't see it, he said, looking kind of annoyed at me. You're not using it for anything, and I could make good money on it. Why don't you let me have it? But I just want to keep it, I said. Isn't that all right if I just want to have it? Do I have to have a reason for everything? The man shrugged his shoulders and turned away. Well, okay, kid, have it your own way. But if you change your mind, let me know. Here's my address. He gave me a slip of paper and walked back to his red pickup truck. He raced the engine a few times and spun the truck around and zoomed off up the street, leaving a big cloud of dust behind. Almost every day there'd be somebody who wanted me to sell Uncle Beasley to him for some reason or other. A great big yellow convertible drove up one time, and a smooth-looking man with a little bit of black mustache got out. He started to offer me a cigarette from a silver cigarette case, but then he changed his mind, I guess. Does Mr. Nathan Twitchell live here? He asked. I told him yes. Is he home? Yup. Well, run along and tell him I'd like to speak with him on business. He turned away and didn't pay any more attention to me, as if he was a king or something, and I was just there to run errands for him. I didn't like his high-handed manner too much, so I just stood there. Pretty soon he turned around and frowned at me. Didn't I tell you I wanted to speak with Mr. Nathan Twitchell? He said. Don't waste my time, young man. You are speaking to him, I said. I'm Nathan Twitchell. He changed his manner then. Oh, he said. I understand you're the owner of a live dinosaur. Well, I'm the vice president of the Old Mill Pond Whiskey Corporation. I have a little proposition for you. I'd like to rent your dinosaur for a while so we can use it in our big advertising campaign. I couldn't see what a dinosaur had to do with whiskey, so I finally asked him about it. Why, it's perfectly obvious, he said. What's the most important thing about any whiskey? I wasn't too sure about that, not having had any. The way it tastes? I said. Not at all, he said. No two people could ever agree about how any drink tastes. That's just a matter of personal opinion. The most important thing about whiskey is how old it is. Then you can talk about facts, you see. Whiskey A is 2 years old and whiskey B is 3 years old. So everybody buys whiskey B. It's as simple as that. How old is Old Mill Pond? I asked him. He lowered his voice a little. Well, just between you and me, it isn't any too old. That's why we need some really hot advertising. That's where the dinosaur comes in. But how can the dinosaur make it any older? I said. It doesn't actually make it any older, it makes it seem older. That's the whole secret of advertising, my boy. And that's why the distillers always have pictures of old mills and rocking chairs and grandfathers on their labels. Now, what could be older than a dinosaur? You can't beat it. It's the oldest thing around. If the idea catches on, we might even change the name of our brand to Old Dinosaur or Old Fossil. No, that sounds too dry. Perhaps Old Jurassic. We'll be the oldest sounding drink on the market and we'll make a fortune. But what would you do with the dinosaur? I asked. Oh, we'd put him on display in a big truck and paint it all up in flashy colors and put banners on the top. Hire a sound truck and tour the country. It'll make Old Mill Pond the best known name in the business. It would be a wonderful thing for us. I don't think it would be a wonderful thing for the dinosaur, I said. All that racket and moving around would probably make him sick. Don't worry about that, the man said. We'd pay you $200 a month while he lived. He'd last long enough to make good money out of him. I thought about that $200 a month, but finally I shook my head. I don't guess I better. The man threw up his hands. But what are you going to do with him then? I'm not going to do anything with him, I said. I just want to have him. Isn't it enough just to have something? Not when you can make money on it, the man said. He took a printed card out of a case and gave it to me. Now, when you get tired of just having this dinosaur, let me know, will you? He walked back to his big yellow car and drove away. I think it was just a few days later that a letter came from the McDermott's Luggage Company. Dear Mr. Twitchell, we were interested to hear that you have come into possession of a live dinosaur. As you may know, we are manufacturers of fine hand luggage and make a specialty of luggage in a wide variety of unusual leathers, such as buffalo calf, gemsbok, baby whale, and iguana. It occurred to us that you might be willing to let us have your dinosaur for this purpose. We assure you that we are prepared to make you a very good offer, for there is no other dinosaur hide on the market at present. Sincerely, Edward P. McDermott, President. I didn't like that idea very much. Imagine making Uncle Beasley into a suitcase? It made me shiver just to think of it. Well, things went on this way for a week or so, with people coming in every now and then, perhaps only about 20 people a day. Some of them had some pretty queer ideas. One man came with one of those tape recorder things, and he said he wanted to record the voice of prehistoric time. He spent most of the afternoon trying to get Uncle Beasley to make some sort of noise. The man squeaked and growled and barked and roared at him. Then the man finally got disgusted and said some things to himself that I bet he wouldn't want to have recorded. Then he went away. The dinosaur had been growing like anything, and by the middle of August, he was a good 5.5 feet long, counting his tail, and about 2.5 feet high. He'd gotten too heavy for the kitchen scales when he was 5 days old. And after that, we had to get 2 bathroom scales and lay a plank over them, and then get Uncle Beasley to stand on the plank. We'd read what the 2 scales said and add them together, and then subtract what the plank weighed. Dr. Zimmer's notebook went along like this. August 12th, length 5 feet 1 inch, weight 106 pounds. August 13th, length 5 feet 3.5 inches, weight 121 pounds. August 14th, length 5 feet 6 inches, 144 pounds. You can see that he was really coming right along. The doctor was the most surprised man. He said he'd never known any animal to grow that fast. He used to stand there and puzzle over it while he was watching Uncle Beasley eat. I know reptiles can grow very fast, he told me. Take alligators, for instance. They can grow to be 6 feet long in 5 years. And then, when they're big enough to take care of themselves, they slow down. But this fellow has grown to almost 6 feet in 2 weeks. Of course, the Triceratops was living in an age of big animals, and I suppose they had to grow fast in order to survive. But still, this is an unbelievable rate of growth. I wonder, perhaps the quality of the modern atmosphere is different from what it is 60 million years ago. Perhaps his metabolism has been speeded up. That's just a guess, of course. But anyway, Nate, if he goes along at this rate much longer, we're going to have a problem on our hands. Getting food for the dinosaur was a problem already. I ran out of grass around our place in just a few days. Then I used to go down to the old Spencer place at the end of the street. The grass is just growing wild there, around the house and in the back lot. Joe Champney would go along with me, and we'd take my old express wagon with the sides on it. We'd take turns with the scythe, and when we'd cut enough for one day, we'd pile it on the wagon and tie it on with a clothesline and pull it back to my house. It was hot work, but it was worth it to see old Uncle Beasley plow into a pile of green grass. He just loved to eat. That was all right for a while, but then we found we had to begin making 2 trips a day because 1 load wasn't enough. Joe was beginning to complain that he wasn't getting any time to go fishing anymore, and it wouldn't be long before we'd be out of grass at the Spencer place. Pop suggested that we get old Henry Smith to cut us a patch of grass every couple of days with his tractor. Henry Smith mows the sides of the town roads, and so he has his mowing machine out most of the time. That worked pretty well. Dr. Zimmer borrowed a trailer from the garage, and we could haul a big pile of grass and dump it in our backyard, and that would last for 2 or 3 days. Of course, by the time the dinosaur was much too big to keep in that little pen. Did I skip a page? Oh my God. I thought I was going to We had to give that up when he was about a week old. We decided that the only thing to do was to tether him. So we got a strong leather collar and a cow chain and drove a big crowbar into the ground and fastened the chain to that. It worked pretty well, and Uncle Beasley didn't seem to mind it at all. He was very friendly with me and never tried to bite or poke at me with his horns. He was kind of nervous with other people, though, and he didn't like loud noises. They seemed to make him angry. Dr. Zimer told me I ought to exercise Uncle Beasley every day since he was tied up that way. So I would take him for a walk in the mornings. I used to do it before breakfast, when it was quiet and cool, and we'd walk up the street to the school and back. It felt pretty queer walking along with that strange animal shuffling along behind me, his head slowly wagging back and forth, and his big tail dragging in the dust.